Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this press briefing on the ongoing visit of His Excellency Mr. Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan, to India. As you are aware, we have just had delegation-level talks. A number of agreements have been signed, including some very, very historic agreements. In fact, we are now skipping lunch, which is going on in Hyderabad House, to brief you all. Today, to brief you all, I have with me Foreign Secretary Dr. S. Jaishankar. I have with me the Ambassador of India to Japan, Mr. Sujan Chinoy. We have the Joint Secretary East Asia, Mr. Pradeep Kumar Rawat, and Joint Secretary Disarmament and International Security Affairs, Amandeep Gill. Foreign Secretary will give you a readout on the discussions that have happened today and the agreements that have been signed, and then we can go into a Q&A session. Please note that we do not have too much time as we have to catch the flight to Varanasi. With that, I give the floor to Foreign Secretary.
Thank you, Vikas. Good afternoon. Let me just very quickly run you through the program, and then I'll give you a sense of the discussion and then the agreements and the other outcomes for today. But before I do that, let me also say, it's often during visits you hear superlative terms, a lot of adjectives in describing a visit, and those of you who were there when the agreements were being signed heard Prime Minister Abe describe it as a new dawn in our relationship and predict a brilliant future. And I think when you hear me out, I'm sure most of you will understand and appreciate why today's discussions and outcomes were being described in such strong terms. In terms of the program, the Prime Minister arrived yesterday. The External Affairs Minister called on him. He attended an innovation event yesterday evening. This morning, the two Prime Ministers met for a business event. They received recommendations of the India-Japan CEO group. They also both spoke to the CEOs present about their assessment of where our economic relations stood. The Prime Minister Abe then called on Rashtrapati Ji and then arrived in Hyderabad House for talks. There was a sort of a restricted session between the two Prime Ministers and then delegation level talks. Then, of course, the signing of the agreements, the press statements, and they're now having lunch. Now, in terms of the issues that came up, obviously bilateral relations generally, bilateral cooperation, particularly economic issues, the use of ODA, official development assistance, investment, civilian nuclear cooperation, the high-speed railways, the whole sense of easy to do business, the Chennai-Bengaluru industrial corridor, the concept of Japanese industrial townships in India, Make in India itself, visa issues, defense and security issues, maritime security, the Japanese participation in Malabar, the Japanese support for our export control regime memberships, connectivity issues, Japanese support for APEC. These and there was some discussion on the climate change conference COP21, which is taking place in Paris. UNSC issues were discussed yesterday by the External Affairs Minister with the Prime Minister. In terms of the agreements, there was, of course, a joint statement which the two Prime Ministers signed. Then there was a memorandum on civilian nuclear energy cooperation. One on high-speed railways. There were two defense agreements and there were 12 other agreements. The joint statement, a fact sheet, and a list of agreements have all been uploaded on the website, right? Yeah. Or are being uploaded on the website. Now, let me very quickly run you through the outcomes, and then we can take this further. One on the civilian nuclear cooperation issue. We have reached substantive agreement on that issue. There are some technical details and obviously legal scrubbing and the internal procedures to be gone through. The key part of the agreement has been done. And this is very important for a variety of reasons. One, of course, because Japan is a very important player in the global nuclear industry in terms of they have a number of areas of particular expertise. And in fact, the fact that we have an agreement which the Japanese system and our system will now look at and complete the formalities soon. This will allow Japan to even partner other countries, particularly I think both Westinghouse and GE had Japanese partners in their nuclear reactor offers. And again, as most of you know, with the climate change right now being in news, India has in the INDC a 40% non-fossil fuel commitment in terms of power generation capacity. So, and nuclear is a very important part of this. So, both in a literal sense in terms of the nuclear industry, in terms of its implications for climate change, I think the fact that we have concluded the negotiations on civil nuclear cooperation with Japan today is a very, very big step. The second agreement, let me stick with the defense political issues, then I'll come to the economic issues. We also signed two defense agreements today, one on the transfer of defense equipment and technology, and the other one on protection of classified information. And together, the two make possible defense cooperation, defense equipment cooperation, defense production cooperation between India and Japan. Also on the defense side, we confirmed today that Japan would be a regular participant at the Malabar exercises, which generally take place between India and the United States. They did participate this year, but by now we've sort of made it, we've agreed to have them on a more regular basis. We've also agreed to expand staff talks between the three services of the two countries. In terms of global political and security issues, let me very quickly run you through some of them. I think as you would see in the joint statement, clearly the issues of freedom of navigation and freedom of overflights was one issue of significance. You see references there to UNCLOS, the UN Convention on Law of Seas, on peaceful resolution of disputes, and also to the situation in the South China Sea, because it is something which is important to both countries, given our energy security and trade and commerce concerns. And the message really from our meeting today is that unilateral actions should be avoided, and that they should establish a code of conduct quickly. I would also draw your attention to the joint position of the two countries on the important, in fact, increasingly urgent global challenge of terrorism. What we have today is really the two leaders strongly condemning terrorism in all forms, underlining that they have zero tolerance, calling upon all countries to implement UN Security Council Resolution 1267, which most of you are familiar with, referring to the need for eliminating terrorist safe havens and infrastructure, disrupting terrorist networks and financing, stopping cross-border movement of terrorists, and underlining the need for countries to effectively deal with transnational terrorism emanating from their territory. There's also a very specific mention of the importance of bringing the perpetrators of terrorist attacks, including those of the November 2008 terrorist attack in Mumbai, to justice. Other than the freedom of navigation over flight and the terrorism issue, I think some of the global issues which came up for discussion were UN reform, where basically, there's a identity of views and approach in this. We work very closely with the Japanese. In fact, we had a G4 level summit in New York in September, which both prime ministers attended. Then we also have an expression of Japanese support for India's aspiration to become an APEC member. Again, many of you would be aware that this is something which we had sought for some time now, and it's now come a little bit more prominently into our diplomatic agenda. As well as for our membership of export control regimes, the 4 regimes, NSG, MTCR, Australia, and Wassenaar. We welcomed Japan's contribution to peace and security, through which were reflected in some of their recent policies. So this is broadly the political security international issues outcome. Let me move very quickly to the economic side. I think the most important outcome today was the agreement to conclude an MOU on the high-speed railway using Shinkansen technology. This is for the Mumbai-Ahmedabad sector, on which Japan had done the feasibility report earlier. This is a big project, I think in dollar terms, roughly about $12 billion project. Japan would roughly fund about 80% of the project. The terms of funding have been very generous. Prime Minister expressed appreciation of that. So that's the big project. Okay, my colleague tells me the estimate's actually a little bit higher. It's not 12 billion, but 15 billion. The second big takeaway was the facility which the Japanese have agreed to create involving NEXI and JBIC for a Make in India. This will be a sort of fund to support Japanese companies investing in India under the Make in India. And this fund would be to the tune of $1.5 trillion, roughly again $12 billion. Now, we take this as a sign of confidence and in the Make in India program and in the Indian economy and the direction of the Indian economy in recent times. So that a country has explicitly created a fund labeled Japan India Make in India Fund, I think has its own symbolism. It tells you the seriousness with which Japan today is looking at its economic prospects in India. Then coming to the official development assistance part, again, many of you would be aware that Japan has a long history of supporting infrastructure development in India using ODA. Now, this year, Japan has, our discussions have been really very ambitious in this regard, and we have an understanding roughly of about 600 billion yen, which is about $5 billion. I think my broad estimate is about 400 billion yen is committed in this financial year, and 200 billion yen carries over into the coming year. Now, again, to give you a sense of what it is we are talking about, this is something, I think you have a map behind me, because I really want you to appreciate today the role that infrastructure collaboration between us can play in terms of modernizing India's economy. We have really this time around 13 big projects which we have looked at. The first one is the Western Dedicated Freight Corridor. The second one is the Ahmedabad Metro project. The third is the modernization of ship recycling yards in Gujarat. Then there's the Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link, and the peripheral ring road around Bengaluru, the Chennai Metro project, the Tuticorin Outer Harbour Project, then the Orissa Transmission Improvement Project, the Orissa Sanitation Project, the Madhya Pradesh Transmission Project, Ganga Rejuvenation, horticulture and irrigation in Jharkhand, and road connectivity projects in the northeast. So if you see, if you just look at the map, look at the geographical spread of these projects, look at the range of infrastructure covered by this, I think you'd get a sense of the importance really that we attach to this particular part of our relationship. I think when people sometimes ask, saying, what does foreign policy really do for the country? I can't give you a better example than what you see in the screen behind me. Japan also has agreed to implement the concept of Japan industrial townships in India, and you will find a reference to that in the joint statement. There was some discussion between the two prime ministers today in how to take that forward quickly. In terms of the corridors, you are all already aware of the dedicated freight corridor, which is progressing, of the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, which is also under implementation. Now we have a new corridor coming into being, the Chennai-Bengaluru industrial corridor, where we are ballpark estimate for what this would cost would be about $5.5 billion. So if I were to really, in a sense, this relationship, let me say, has there's no value you are putting on it. It's a relationship beyond value. But if I were to just sum up today in terms of the size of the economic agenda that we are looking at, we were really looking at this $12 to $15 billion on the high-speed train, the $12 billion on the Make in India Fund, the $5 billion on the official development assistance, and some of it is overlapping, the $5.5 billion on the Chennai-Bengaluru industrial corridor. And I would remind you that last year, the two prime ministers had said that they would set out a goal of $35 billion over the next 5 years. Now, what you have broadly is actually a year later, a sense of where a very, very large proportion of that commitment is going to go. So we moved from an aspirational commitment into project identification, in some cases much more detailed than that, within the space of a year. There was also a broad appreciation of the fact that business environment in India has improved very significantly in the last year. There was a understanding that 10,000 Indians would be visiting Japan as students, as trainees in various capacities in the next 5 years. And during the talks today, Prime Minister told Prime Minister Abe that given the importance of Japan and the uniqueness of this relationship, we have decided that Japanese visitors to India, all visitors, business, tourists, all of them could avail of visa on arrival. They wouldn't need a visa till they actually arrive at an Indian point of entry. So this would be the only country for whom that arrangement would apply. This would come into effect from the 1st of March. There was also some discussion, again you find reflection of it in the joint statement, on the local government, states and cities. Japanese are particularly good at using that as a vehicle for cooperation. So all in all, as you can see, though it's only lunchtime, we've really got a very good day's work done. I think this is a very strong relationship on which for many years it has held huge promise. I think you are seeing now the beginnings of that promise manifest itself in different ways. That's really what I have to say to you currently. We will be off to Varanasi as soon as this press conference is over, and come back later at night, and Prime Minister Abe leaves tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, after that comprehensive statement by Foreign Secretary, there shouldn't have been any need for questions, but those of you who still need to understand better, okay, Shobhajit. Mike.
So, since the nuclear MOU has been signed today, just wanted to get a sense on the three issues that were, challenges in the cooperation. One was the liability, then the fuel tracking, and proliferation concerns. I mean, that India is not part of the NPT, and that was one of the issues. So, how have you, managed these concerns? How have you, passed through these humps?
And NPT. Okay. Are there any other questions on the nuclear? Because I would like to take them all at
Let's
one
take
go.
them in groups.
Yeah.
Nuclear? Okay.
Sir, is it an agreement to, in fact, arrive at a final agreement at a later stage? Is it a framework agreement? What is the agreement? Because you have already said that there are legal issues also, and the statement also mentions that, in fact, it's not the final document.
Okay, noted.
So,
Venkat.
What kind of time frame are we talking about by the time the actual agreement is signed and we start getting things
Okay.
done?
You're also on nuclear? Okay.
You just mentioned the substantive agreement. So what is done and what is being left?
Okay. Okay, Manish.
Foreign Secretary, just want to clarify that can we say that India and Japan have done the nuclear deal? You said we have wrapped up negotiations. So is the deal done and only formality remains? That's
Okay.
number one. And on reprocessing, what is the, how has that been worked out in the agreement?
Shinzo.
Something else.
No.
No.
Let
Let me
now
do
we are
just-
doing only nuclear.
let me
Okay,
just
one
do the
more
nuclear.
question on nuclear and then we are done.
You mentioned GE and Westinghouse. So just to clarify, this agreement is enough for those companies that have Japanese partners to come and start working in India's nuclear sector?
Okay. I think we have enough questions now on the nuclear side.
I think there's
One more?
The one here. Huh? Yeah. Let's just take all the nuclear and get, yeah.
there obviously was a difference of opinion on whether or not India could India could carry out any nuclear test once it entered civil nuclear cooperation with Japan. So have we given any assurance to Japan to reach this substantive agreement, as you said? Thanks.
I think there's one gentleman more.
On the nuclear side, anybody else has a question which has not yet been asked? Okay.
Well, Japanese government concerned about a nuclear test. So Japanese government want hope that if once India does a nuclear test, Japan wants to stop the cooperation. So how have you solved this issue?
Okay.
Okay, I think that gives me enough on this. Now, first of all, I'm not answering it in the order in which you asked, but just so that some of the questions are repetitive and overlapping. We've concluded the negotiations, and somebody asked me, what do you mean by substantive agreement? That means we have agreed on the substance of the various provisions which are in an agreement. But this is not unique to Japan. It also happened, for example, with the US too. You know, we did the sort of reached a certain point, and then you had to have the technical and legal people look at it, and then you have the various formalities. Depending, each country has its own practice. And even the way we do the agreement is sometimes different. I mean, there are countries where we've done a framework agreement and then done administrative arrangements, which are the actual operational procedures later on. Sometimes those have been separately negotiated and take time. Some countries have ratification by legislature, some countries don't. So you have a range of models here. In this particular case with Japan, I think the fact that the two prime ministers signed a memorandum stating that there's been a substantive agreement, and I'm telling you, I think, let me just read to you the exact paragraph from the joint statement, because I think that would very give, it says the two prime ministers welcome the agreement reached between the two governments on the agreement between the government of Japan and the government of the Republic of India for cooperation in peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and confirmed that this agreement will be signed after technical details are finalized, including those related to necessary internal procedures. So as you can see, technical details, and as I said, usually, because mostly the sort of negotiations continue, but till the very end, and then you need a legal team which looks at everything. Sometimes they make minor changes. So the legal scrubbing, the technical details, and then the internal procedures. Now, in the case of Japan, that involves, my understanding is, consideration by the Diet. So I would hesitate to put a timeline, because I'm not conversant with the Japanese internal procedures and their timelines. But the fact that we have reached where we have, which is we have concluded negotiations, the two prime ministers have signed a memorandum, I think that sort of speaks really for itself. Now, in terms of what were the obstacles and challenges and so on, look, I think from outside the room, people had their own versions or their own sense of what the challenges were. They were not always the challenges in that priority that we faced till the end. For example, you raised liability. I think the Japanese side was assured of the efficacy of the liability solutions that we had found earlier in the year. So certainly in the last few rounds, this was not a particularly big issue. They have seen that today the liability regime is working, that other producers are satisfied, that there is a credible sort of market-based mechanism which will address industry concerns. On the NPT issue, that issue we, in a sense, we put behind us with Japan's help in 2008 itself, when in fact the nuclear suppliers group decided to make an exception for India, and Japan supported that, making that exception. So the world today, the world today accepts that NPT was a product of a particular time and a particular situation, and that sometimes there are some realities that you need to address, which have happened subsequently. And if the record of the country is responsible, if their need is serious, if they have been credible in implementing their commitments, I think all these have led different countries to consider the need for making exceptions. And so I don't think the NPT itself is a particular obstacle to this negotiation. Again, the whole issue of what you call tracking. We have addressed this. We have addressed this not just with Japan. We've addressed it with a lot of other countries, including the United States and Australia and Canada. And I think we have today produced a template which satisfies all major nuclear suppliers. Similarly, I think somebody asked me on reprocessing. It's been a long-standing position of India that we reprocessing is an integral part of our nuclear program, because the manner in which we run our nuclear program, we reprocess the spent fuel, we don't let it accumulate, we reuse the spent fuel. So any solution that we have done will be in consonance with our long-standing policy. I think, I think someone asked me whether this would make someone a partner, effective partner for GE and Westinghouse. Well, obviously, that will all happen when the Japanese and the Indian side complete their internal procedures and the ratification takes place. But it would do much more than that. It would actually make the Japanese themselves, once these formalities are effectively addressed, it will make the Japanese themselves as independent suppliers in the nuclear area for India. I think these are really very, to my mind, this is a very, very important development today. But it's not a complete development. I mean, there are still steps to be taken.
I think that completes this basket. Now we'll move to the other basket. Ashish.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, look, we have again a long-standing position on this matter at a time when the international community was considering making an exception for India and the nuclear supplies group. India had reminded them of the voluntary moratorium that we had put in place. I'm not quite sure why you are raising it with that degree of concern, but I really, again, don't see this as such a major issue. I think, most countries in the world accept that India's word is credible, that Indian commitments are serious. At the end of the day, international relations much depends on credibility and trust, and I would say that we are not wanting on either aspect. If they were not convinced, would we have had an agreement?
This side, Foreign Secretary. Just sir, what is the timeline, if you could tell us about the high-speed rail, sir? कब तक वो train चलेगी, bullet train? Actually, Prime Minister का ये dream कब से fulfill होगा? About this agreement, sir.
Wait. Hang on, please. Any other questions on HSR?
The train.
Huh? Because I'm running tight on time, so please cluster your questions. Sorry? Interested. Okay.
हाँ.
जो लागत होगी वो किस तरह से पूरा जापान उसका कॉस्ट वहन करेगा या भारत?
Model. Okay. Anyone else on the bullet train? Yeah.
And repayment.
Sorry?
Terms of funding, loan and repayment, if you could elaborate.
Okay. Anybody? That's it?
And
okay. You see, we have right now an agreement in principle that for the Mumbai-Ahmedabad line, India has decided to use Shinkansen, the Japanese high-speed rail technology. The terms which the package that Japan has offered us is a highly concessional loan with repayment for over 50 years, with a 15-year moratorium at an interest rate of 0.1%. Those are the terms. There will be, again, we have an in-principle agreement that there will be transfer of technology that under Make in India program. Obviously, it has to be done in a phased manner. But at this time, we have a broad agreement, broad understanding. It has been decided to constitute a committee at a very senior level, which will now get to work on this project. So I will not be able to answer the timeline issue. But again, I would say, the idea of a high-speed train is something which is everybody's dream.
No, but there is no timeline for that.
Feasibility study में 7 साल की timeline. Sorry?
There is no timeline even
No, my colleague who's been involved in this a little longer than me tells me that the feasibility study indicates that the Mumbai-Ahmedabad link will take 7 years to do. No, 7 years to do, to execute.
To complete.
No, Shinzo didn't have.
Shinzo didn't have? Acha. Okay. Okay, Shinzo.
So this Malabar exercise, are you saying it's going to happen every year, whether in the Sea of Japan and in the Bay of Bengal? Do you also see bilateral naval exercises in the Sea of Japan? And also, what kind of reaction are you expecting from Beijing on this?
Anybody else on? In fact, not just on Malabar, but if you can do the defense security.
On defense, yeah. Anyone on defense? Abhishek? Sorry, Pranay.
So, any further progress on the purchase of the amphibious aircraft?
I think from the previous topic, there was no explanation about sourcing.
Sorry.
From the previous topic, Shinkansen, bullet train, there was no answer about the sourcing. How many percentage of sourcing comes from Japanese companies? Is there any limitation? I think there was one question for the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and you didn't mention about that. I want to know how many percent. Is there any limitation for India or in Japan?
As both sides discuss about South China Sea issue, what might be the further cooperation on South China Sea between India and Japan? Thank you.
Okay, I think that we have enough questions.
Okay. On the high-speed rail, what was agreed to was that basically the sourcing would be from Japan or from joint ventures or from Indian companies. But there wasn't anything more specific than that. So again, as I said, at this time, what we have is a broad understanding, and this committee, which will work on this particular project, obviously will evolve greater details as we go along. If I can turn to the defense, beginning with Malabar. Yes, we do Malabar every alternate year. Oh, yeah, there you are. I was wondering where you'd gone. We do Malabar every alternate year, and 1 year it's done on the Japan side. So that routine would continue. I think the difference is that till now, India and US do Malabar. Some years Japan has joined on an irregular basis. Now it would be regular. So from irregular, episodic to regular. That is the change. The US2 was discussed, and I think we don't have any decision or any indication to give right now. So matter remains under consideration, and the joint statement reflects that. And in terms of cooperation on South, I am not sure I would characterize it that way. I think South China Sea is an arena which is of concern to us, because both countries see a lot of their energy and their trade and commerce pass through those waters. And so to have freedom of navigation and freedom of overflights for us is important. Also, it is important for us to have peace in that region, and we'd like the countries of the region to agree on a code of conduct so that peace and security is strengthened. But we have broad, maritime cooperation with Japan. It is not something which we would say applies to one particular area and not to another particular area.
We are running out of time. I'll take 2 more questions. Okay, we have exhausted? Excellent.
Yeah, but we haven't done location. Why don't you?
Yeah, why don't you answer?
At present, there's a proposal for about 11, but they are in very different stages. Supa is certainly one. There's another one in Rajasthan, Gelot. and they are also talking about another in Madhya Pradesh. So these 11, as Foreign Secretary has mentioned in the map, they are also spread geographically in various parts of India.
Okay, last question.
चाइना के साथ जो हाई स्पीड ट्रेन और बुलेट ट्रेन पे बातचीत चल रही थी, तो क्या ये मान के चलें कि अब वो साइड हो गया और जापान के साथ हमारे हाई स्पीड ट्रेन चलेगी रिश्तों की भी?
ये प्रश्न जब चाइना की विजिट होती है तब मेरे से पूछिए.
Thank you all.